Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, the show. Last time was a rare Sunday night episode. This time it's a rare Friday night episode, and that's because it's been a big week. It's been a newsy week. We talked on the last show, before the international break, about how we would have a show this week. We didn't know exactly when, but it ends up being on a Friday. And that's not due to our scheduling. That's just due to all the news that broke on Tuesday. And that was made official today, Friday morning. Tata Martino no longer the head coach of Inter Miami. We will dive into why that is, what's next for Inter Miami, who's next for Inter Miami. But joining me here on Miami Total Football. Oh man, I couldn't even do it. Okay, do it again. Radio, the show is Jose Armando, who has a new look, a four-eyed look. And I'm not saying that in any negative way. I would wear contact lenses and have since I was in the 7th grade. I wore glasses before that, so not saying that in any negative way, but he does have glasses on for, I think, the first time in our show's history. Jose, how are you doing and what's up with this new look?
I'm good. I'm good. No, it's just, sometimes when it's not that I need them. Like it's just, I just get too tired. It's been too way too many hours in front of the computer, and so, just to give my eyes a little bit of rest. But that's about it. I have pretty good vision. I think I've shown that in both media games. A lot of quality. Still can, you know, feed everybody on the field, perform like a top player that I am. Amazing, amazing. Just
Uh,
just just getting the season review started with the media game.
there we
Perfect way to
go.
do
There we go.
it.
Jose, we don't have a lot of time because it's Friday night. People probably want to go either out to dinner or out to the club or out to the bar or
People are probably in traffic. It's Miami, so they're probably in traffic and still on their way back home from work. So
hey, listen, if you have a 5-10 minute commute, like some people I know, me, then it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Jose, we've got a lot to talk about in a short span because, like I said, Friday night, you have some other work assignments to get to, but we've got a lot to talk about, which is no surprise here because it tends to happen when you're talking about Inter Miami these days. So Tata Martino is out as Inter Miami's head coach. There's rumors about who's next. We will get to that later on. But we'll focus on the initial part of this news, and that's that after a season and a half, due to personal reasons, that is the official explanation, that is the official reasoning, Tata Martino will no longer be the head coach of Inter Miami. He had a press conference today, about 15 minutes or so, after which Jorge Mas spoke. But Tata Martino was not in the room for that, although they had a pleasant exchange, a nice hug, and that was it. So, by all accounts, and again, this is the information. We'll get to our sensations, we'll get to our suppositions in a little bit. But the information as of right now, la información de hoy es que Tata Martino ya no es entrenador del Inter Miami. So he's no longer the head coach due to personal reasons. Razones personales fue la razón. He did mention that he is going back to Rosario, which is where he's from. So not clear if that means it's family reasons or what. He didn't go into details as to what the personal reasons are, but he did say he was going back to Rosario. So, Jose, I mean, I'll share this clip from the press conference first before getting your thoughts on it, because Tata talks about the timing of his exit, when he had the initial thoughts. So let's listen to Tata Martino here, and then we'll dive all into it. Again, we'll present the information first. Acá está la información. Here's Tata Martino.
Quiero ser preciso. 5 o 6 días posterior a la eliminación, me junté con Raúl, hablé con Leo y hablé con Jorge. Son los 3 que primero supieron de la noticia entre viernes y sábado, y lo llevábamos muy bien hasta creo que fue el día martes, y que todavía yo no había hablado con los futbolistas y esperaba hacerlo. Bueno, ahí se desencadenó todo y tuvimos, ya cuando fui a hablar con los jugadores era algo que ellos ya sabían. Eh, bueno, está claro que cuando se corta un vínculo de esta manera, sin demasiados motivos aparentes, y sobre todo pedir al que está afuera que lo entienda. Si yo ocupo un lugar que yo estoy seguro que hay un montón de entrenadores que quisieran estar. Y cualquiera diría, pero este loco está en este lugar, viviendo en esta ciudad, trabajando en esta liga y se va donde todos quieren venir. Bueno, yo tengo cosas de esta en mi carrera y pasa lo que pasa y me tengo que ir. Pero, y además cuando uno habla de cuestiones que tienen que ver con lo personal, no estábamos hablando, che, jugadores, cómo jugar, cuál es el proyecto, coincidimos, no coincidimos. Estamos hablando de cosas personales, no hay mucho por hacer. Entonces, yo les agradezco que me han respetado la situación, que la han entendido y nada, el club sigue adelante, a todos nos cuesta y el club sigue adelante como corresponde y seguramente con muchos éxitos.
So that was a long-winded response as to when the decision came about. Now he says, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, don't understand Spanish, he said he made the initial had the initial discussion that he was leaving 5 to 6 days after the playoff defeat, which would put it at what last Friday, right? Roughly, that's what we gathered. And what we also gathered, which we'll get to later on, is that the coaching search began a day later. But Tata Martino, while he made official or made at least public, not public, I guess private to Inter Miami, that he was planning to leave 5, 6 days after the playoff defeat, he had been thinking about it for a little bit now. I will listen to this from Tata Martino, where he reveals when the initial thoughts started coming into his head as to whether he would stick around for 2025 or not.
La decisión definitivamente la tomé antes del primer partido de playoff. Por supuesto, nadie, ni siquiera mi cuerpo técnico sabía de esta decisión final. Había que jugar 3 partidos, intentábamos jugar menos con Atlanta. No quería que haya ningún motivo de distracción y siempre buscando que el último partido con Atlanta en los días siguientes pudiese manifestar, aprovechando que venía la fecha FIFA, esta situación y el hecho de no poder continuar. Con lo cual la decisión estaba tomada algunas semanas antes.
So there he says he was already aware that he was going to make the decision before the series with Atlanta. So I'm not saying the timelines aren't adding up, but he's known about this for a while based on his comments. But he didn't make it known to Inter Miami until after the playoff defeat, after they lost the best of 3 series. This is the information as well. We don't have the bite. We don't have the audio bite of it, but Julian Gressel, he's been doing his own podcast. He had his own podcast where he dove into some interesting nuggets about Inter Miami, but he also made a guest appearance on another podcast, I think yesterday. In there, he says that he had heard rumblings of Tata Martino leaving before the playoff series began. Now, Tata Martino said in that second clip that he didn't even tell his coaching staff about it before the playoff series began. So something quite doesn't add up. Now, again, this is all information. This is not Jose supposition or my sensation. These are quotes, comments, declaraciones from the protagonists on Inter Miami. So Jose, based on what we know, what we don't know, what we've heard, what do you make of all of it?
Well, it's very hard for me to believe the personal reasons narrative. I think, the timeline, it's not very clear. There are some other, nuggets when it comes to what Jorge Mas said and the timeline that Jorge Mas talked about after Tata Martino. It's not completely out of the picture when it comes to, a head coach leaving a team. There are conversations between ownership and coaching staff as to how do we want to handle, the next step. Okay, we have an agreement in terms that, ownership wants to change the head coach, but how are we going to take the next step so that everybody's happy? It seems like in this particular situation, everybody's happy with how things unfolded. But I don't buy that there are personal reasons, to be honest with you. That's not, it's not as clear to me. Um, and based also on, and I'm sure we'll see clips. I don't know if maybe if I'm mistaken, but we'll hear some of the thoughts from Jorge Mas, right? But and I don't want to jump ahead for the first time ever in this show. So I don't buy it. I will say this up front.
So wait, so we're jumping from the information now to your sensation.
Yes.
Okay,
This is my. I think you have pretty much, all the information is pretty much out there.
That's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to ask you before you give your sensation. I want to make sure we cover all the bases from an information standpoint. So we've covered all the bases. What Tata has said today, we haven't really. We've kind of sprinkled in some of what Jorge Mas said, but there's a bigger picture at play there because of what the next head coach or who the next head coach would be. We've also talked about Julian Gressel's podcast comments. Again, he's been on two different ones. The one that he's on regularly, and then I think he was a guest on another one. I'll get the names here. I'll try to get the names so that we can plug those channels. And if you want to go listen to the podcast, you can. I know Major League Journeyman is the one that he's regularly on, that he helps run. So that's one where
I think that's the one that he was a guest on.
Was he? See, I knew I needed to, that's why I wanted to get the information right. But anyway, I'll get it right before the show ends so that you can go listen to those interviews. But nonetheless, Julian Gressel comments, Tata Martino comments from this week, and a little bit of Jorge Mas's comments. All right, that's the inside information. We've covered all our bases, right? We're not missing anything. I haven't missed anything.
No.
All right. So now your supposition or your takeaway. Why do you find this hard to believe? What's not adding up to you? What makes you smell or think that something is amiss?
Because we were to almost every training session this year. And, in the last few months, there was never a glimpse of Tata Martino, talking to us about, a situation in which he was not involved in 2025. So he said he has been thinking about this, but, just, I think it was in maybe the second to last media availability of the season. He talked about Ian Frey, and I think you actually asked him about Ian Frey. And
right.
he mentioned Ian Frey as to a player that was going to be available for him early next year. So he never mentioned, okay, he's gonna be available for the team next year, or I don't know if I'm gonna be here, but whoever is available here, he's gonna recover. Stuff like that will lead you to think like, okay, so that maybe there's a chance that he's not coming back next year. There was never, even a glimpse of something like that happening. So, that was the first thing, and then again, the timeline. The timeline just doesn't add up to me. I mean, there's no way, like, you go to an ownership, you tell them, you surprise them with the idea of not coming back for next year, and all of a sudden, ownership already has a list of over 3 coaches because Jorge Mas said that they narrowed down the list to 3, so they had more than 3 on that list. I mean, that to me, it's very hard to believe that an ownership is going to be looking for another head coach if they don't want it. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I just don't buy it, and probably this is the base case scenario, because personal reasons, sometimes it's something bigger than the game, as you have to leave a job like this one in particular. So, I mean, I guess the best, el peor de todos los males is that, he's just, getting fired and nothing else is happening in his life or with his family.
So that's your sensation, that he got let go. All right. So I was in Argentina, coincidentally, on Tuesday when the news filtered through. I was surprised by it, as many whereas probably most people were, that Tata Martino was parting ways with Inter Miami. Now, my initial sensation there, without the information that has trickled in over the last few days, was that he got fired, right? Like that was my sensation. They just came off of a very disappointing early playoff exit. No questions about his tactics in that final game. That was my sensation. Today and everything since, I agree with you that I don't buy that it's just personal reasons. Like that's the to me. And listen, maybe there are personal reasons for Tata Martino in this case, right? Maybe there are. Right? I don't have that information. Maybe there are, but there's plenty of times in professional sports where a team, a player, a coach will cite is out due to personal reasons because they don't want to explain the actual reason, right? It's like the easy cop out. So while it's, if there are personal reasons with his family or whatnot, then that's completely valid. But I think it's fair game to be skeptical, to question, and to be suspicious of why he's leaving. Now, he said, he's had different moments like this throughout his career where he up and leaves, right? And he did do something similar. This is information. He did do something similar with Atlanta United while he was there. He announced, it was already filtering through, but he announced during their playoff run to MLS Cup that he was leaving at the end of that year. They ended up winning MLS Cup. The difference there was he had a job lined up. He was going to be Mexico's head coach.
And a much bigger job as well.
Here, he did say in a different moment that he does not plan to coach until some point. He said best case scenario would be a few months into next year because he's got nothing lined up, and it would depend on la propuesta, el proyecto, the offer, the project. Seeing how serious it is, etc., etc., etc. Newell's Old Boys, his hometown club, if I'm not mistaken, they have a coaching vacancy. Now, there are some whispers or some rumors that he might be gunning to take that position. Why that would be? Maybe he wants to just be home. Maybe maybe there's family things that are involved there. I don't know. We don't have that information. All the same, I'm with you. I just don't buy that this is just personal reasons. I think there's something more at play here. I agree with you about the timeline. Something just doesn't make sense. Julian Gressel saying that as the playoffs were starting, there were some rumblings, but Tata Martino saying he didn't even tell his coaching staff. So something doesn't quite add up there. Now, a lot of people that heard the press conference, even media members today, also have that same sensation. Right? Like, something's just not right. Is this Tata Martino getting fired by Inter Miami and then putting a nice face on it just to publicly look like, okay, he's moving on because of personal reasons, but we're going to go in a different direction because of whatever reason? I mean, it's fair. It's fair. Now we're speculating, but it's not uncommon. This is not something that just you and I are talking about. It's something that other media members were talking about after the press conferences today. You see the comments on social media from people that follow this team or that follow Lionel Messi. I mean, what can you add to that? What can you say about that? Of course, again, we don't have information, but what could have happened here? What may have transitioned for Tata Martino to leave for personal reasons?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me as well that, I think we obviously have to combine, what Tata said, which, by the way, it was very brief, which, I give him a lot of credit. Maybe it's part of the agreement, but I still give him a lot of credit for him taking the time to, have this final press conference, because this is something that we didn't have with Phil, we didn't have with Diego Alonso.
No, Phil and Diego Alonso, by official wording, were let go, right? They were fired. Whereas Tata is leaving on his own terms. I mean, that's publicly what we're getting.
Yeah, good. That's good management from Tata right there. So I have to combine whatever we heard from Tata with the other side, which is perspective from Jorge Mas. And Jorge Mas touched on one point in particular where he said about the back four or back five. Now, I want to be clear as to where exactly did Jorge Mas hear about the back four or the back five. because there are very few outlets out there that continue to talk about that back four or the back five.
Let's go.
I mean, really. So he mentioned that, and he said, "I want this team to be an attacking-minded team."
I'm going to time you out because I have the clip. We will share it so we can listen to it. So that way we hear it from the horse's mouth, for lack of a better phrase. And then we can dive into it a little bit more here because Jorge Mas did touch on. I mean, I thought his press conference was very interesting. A lot of nuggets from there, which we'll try to get to here at the end. But let's listen to let's listen to some of those details.
Raul's met with him Friday. I knew Friday, but I had a long conversation with Tata Saturday morning. Finished at 11. Our coaching search started at 11:01. We had a list. There is, and I think Tata expressed something here. This is an extremely attractive job. I don't want to make this sound as it should, but this is an extremely attractive position for a coach. We got it down to 3 final candidates by Tuesday, and we made, and David, myself, and my brother, and Raul made a decision of who we wanted to move forward with day before yesterday. And
so, based on that timeline, we'll share the clip that you're talking about. Based on that timeline, Inter Miami found Tata's replacement in a mere 5 days. Right?
5 days.
And so the initial announcement came through on Friday.
Right.
To Raul, which is sitting there next to Tata Martino, who's essentially the head of the sporting side now. It's no longer Chris Henderson.
Yeah.
So Friday, Tata makes the decision, communicates the decision to Inter Miami, which I'm sure Jorge Mas at that point, he didn't say this. I'm sure he was also informed that day before officially meeting with Tata Martino on Saturday. At 11:01, because he said the meeting ends at 11. At 11:01, Jorge Mas then begins a coaching search with Jose Mas, with Raul, with David Beckham. Okay? I don't know if they just got on a Zoom call all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, all the schedules align so that
right,
they could
especially
be
David Beckham.
Especially
David
right.
Beckham, who's traveling the world. He's a globetrotter with all his brands all over the world, but somehow he was able to get on a Zoom call with them at some point at 11:01 on Saturday, and they began their coaching search. Look, I don't deny and I don't disagree, and I don't think Jorge Mas is lying when he says Inter Miami, the head coaching position, is a very attractive job. I think for a lot of reasons, Messi, the weather, yes, there's pressure, but compared to other clubs around the world, not that much pressure. There's a lot of things to be excited about. It's a very cushy job in the world of football, in a very nice market. Speaks, a market that speaks Spanish fluently in a lot of pockets. There's a lot to like. So I don't think there's a shortage of people who would want to come here, but I just don't think it's that easy to just play some phone calls and be like, hey, are you interested? Okay, well, we want you here. Let's get to contract terms right now. Do you have family? Okay, what about your family? All right, good. I just don't see how that got sorted between Saturday at 11:01 and then Wednesday, because they said they narrowed down. So they must have not slept, right? They must have been drinking a lot of Celsius, which that's Inter Miami's one of their corporate sponsors. They must have been drinking Celsius on Saturday, on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They must have been exhausted from not sleeping all day because they were placing phone calls to people in Europe and South America with different time zones, different hours, talking to ages, figuring it all out. They came to their bottom 3 or their top 3 candidates, and in a matter of one more day, they made their decision. Now, there's been talk. We can talk about it now. There's been talk that next head coach will be Javier Mascherano, Lionel Messi's former former Barcelona and former Argentina national team teammate. He currently coaches Argentina's under-20 team. At times has coached the under-17 team. Hasn't gone well from him from a results standpoint. Does he have experience at the highest level? Absolutely. But he's not a very experienced head coach in general, right? In general, as a head coach, he's not very experienced. As a player, as a person in the mundo de fútbol, yes, he has, he's played at the highest level as a player. As a head coach, and someone said something here in the comment section, if I can find it, but it said, this is giving me Phil Neville nepotism vibes. Here it is. And it came from Take 721. By the way, look at the comments now here on Miami to talk about Radio, the show. They are much larger. I did not do that. That is the streaming service, which has made a much welcome improvement there because it's much bigger. OMGs, Mascherano. I'm getting 2021 Phil Neville vibes of nepotism all over again. Jose, is that accurate? Is that fair? Although they're not related, right? Nepotism, that means family, cronyism, whatever. You get the point. Jose, is that fair?
I hate to say it, but yes, I think this is Messi's decision. I think this is the reason why we don't get to talk to Jorge Mas very often. Because there's a very small group of people that cover Inter Miami that we actually know how to read into whatever he's saying. And we can have some sort of idea of what's true and what's not, right? I think it's impossible to make a decision in 5 days. I mean, do you want to handle your team with Lionel Messi in just a few months before the Club World Cup, probably the biggest year coming up for Inter Miami in their short history? And do you want to hand your team to someone you don't even know personally? Because every candidate within this list, I'm assuming that you want to meet that person, right? You don't. This is not 2020.
So they didn't fly to Argentina on an overnight flight on Monday to go talk to Javier Mas. Maybe I just missed him in Argentina. Maybe while I was there, I should have just hung out at the airport. Maybe I would have seen Jorge Mas land alongside David Beckham and Jose Mas.
I don't know. So, a Zoom call is enough. It's very hard to believe. That timeline it's very hard to believe. But, the reality is, at some point, Messi's input was about to come out. And that's exactly what happened, because Jorge did mention that he talked to Messi, and he actually said that he talked to Messi during the weekend, and not on Tuesday, just like when the rest of the team found out. So that means Messi's input is very important here. So I think Mascherano coming into Miami, there's a big input from number 10. I don't know if he makes the final decision or every decision, but I would say his recommendation would go a long way.
Steve Munoz in the comment section. By the way, the comment section is live today. Sorry we haven't gotten there yet. There's just a lot of information to present there. So I wanted to do all that before we can dive into the comment section. But thank you guys, of course, for always listening, tuning in, being part of the community and chatting and having at it. We enjoy it. And I try to get to all the comments I can, but obviously there's so many. I don't try to censor anybody. If you curse, if you don't, if you go with my opinion, if you agree with my opinion, I put them all out there, regardless of what Jose and Andres say. So Steve Munoz says, Mascherano is
the comments. That's
well, I have to filter them. Right? I don't filter them in terms of the content. I just have to pick and choose here based on what I see while I'm trying to conduct the show. Steve Munoz says, Mascherano's 28 wins, 10 draws, 12 losses all time as a coach. It's not too bad, but this is definitely Neville 2.0. Jose, we've presented a lot of information here. It's time for our suppositions and our sensations, because you touched on it, but you did it in a very nice way. You and I had a nice little lunch after these press conferences, and we were very much more in detail, but we spent a lot of time talking about this. So now it's time to get in more detail. Jose, my sensation, I agree with you. Of course, Lionel Messi is going to have influence in the next head coach, right? He's the star player. I mean, his fingerprints are all over this organization, not just this team, in terms of the influence he has, the impact he has, not only on the field, but off the field. in the setup of the team. I mean, it's not a surprise that Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba are all here. I mean, I think it's clear that Lionel Messi has that star power within Inter Miami, where maybe you're right, maybe he's not calling the final shot, but he definitely influences how the shots are being called in a very big way. He has that star power to him. Like LeBron James, if you want to use a stateside example or comparison, LeBron James, maybe not so much with the Miami Heat, but once he left Miami and he went back to Cleveland, and then when he went to LA, there was a lot there with regards to how his star power influences decisions that are being made, whether it be head coaches, player personnel decision, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they drafted his kid this year, which says a lot, right? It says a lot as to who's calling the shots there. Same thing here. My sensation, same thing here. There's no way you're telling me that Inter Miami, which is a very attractive club to work for, so the head coaching position is a very attractive position. There's no shortage of candidates that would want to work at Inter Miami, right? By Tata Martino's own comments, by Jorge Mas's own comments here earlier today. So if you have no shortage of candidates and you've spoken to a long list of top quality candidates over the last few years, how is it that you wind up on Javier Mascherano? How is it that you wind up on a coach who has not coached at the highest levels, who has not proven anything? He has no MLS experience. Like, how did you end up on Javier Mascherano? How did that decision come about? Oh, well, what a surprise that he's also Lionel Messi's close friend, compatriot, former national team teammate, former club team teammate. What a surprise. What a surprise. This is absolutely either Messi calling the shot or Messi strongly suggesting what he wanted and Inter Miami pandering to him or giving him what he wants because that's what they think is best for the organization to keep their star player happy. That's not uncommon, and you can agree or disagree, but that's what it seems like to me. That is what I read into everything here. Because there's no way if you have a wide net, right? This was when they sacked Diego Alonso after the first season, and they said they cast a wide net and they looked far and wide and they wanted to leave no stone unturned. They came across and decided on David Beckham's friend, David Beckham's former teammate at Manchester United and with the English national team. They landed on Phil Neville, who had no previous experience or very limited experience. He coached on the women's side and never coached on the men's side as a top manager or a head coach. But they landed on him. We saw how that went. It did not go well. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything for Javier Mascherano if and when he is announced as head coach. But that's what it seems like to me. This is just Messi bringing in another one of his chosen ones, the ones that are in his entorno, his inner circle, his group, and saying, all right, I think you're going to do a great job. Come on over.
Right. And I think, if you look at it from Messi's standpoint, I guess it's fair game for him. It's his team. He basically owns part of the team. He wants to extend his career as much as possible. But if you look from the club's perspective, I think this is a downgrade from Tata Martino. Well, in terms of in so many ways. I mean, Tata experience, the way, we were able to approach him throughout the year, was so different from what we were used to before in Inter Miami that, I think we're really gonna miss that coming up in 2025. I think Tata did really, manage the team in a good way, knowing that he had the challenge of taking care of Messi throughout the year. Because he would be the one to blame if for some reason Messi didn't play in Copa America for Argentina. He would be the one to blame if for some reason Messi didn't perform at all. So I think this is a downgrade. But it's Messi's decision, and he's gonna have to help Mascherano back it up because especially in 2025 there will be no next year, at least for now, and even if they were not able to win championships in 2024 or 2025, what makes you think they will do it in 2026 with Messi much older, right? And probably Boosie and Jordi out of the picture. So this is a big year. This is a big year, and if I was an Inter Miami fan, I don't know what my sensations would be today. I mean, I think I would be concerned. I wouldn't be completely excited. I would be concerned more than anything else.
Andrea Llanes is not on the podcast this week, Ajicita, but she is in the comment section. Look at that profile picture. It's amazing. Hello, Miami Total Futbol. I really like this new comment section. If you're listening to the podcast, because you're more of a listener than a viewer, you're missing out on some great graphics and some great content here, because now we get full-blown images and big, bold letters with everyone's comments, which is great. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You know, when they went from Phil Neville, they axed him, team was doing poorly, and they went to Tata Martino. That was clearly, at that point, an upgrade. Right? Before the ball had even rolled, you would say it was an upgrade because Tata Martino had won an MLS Cup. He had experience coaching at the highest levels, at the international stage, at the club level, had coached in MLS before, had won an MLS Cup. You know, he had proven resume, which doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, but it gives you a good idea of what he can offer you. Whereas where you get a young coach, it's a complete mystery, an enigma, which maybe Javier Mascherano comes in next year and he gets the best out of his buddies, now his players, and he finds the way to get the best out of the young guys as well. And they win MLS Cup, and Jorge Mas and Jose Mas and David Beckham and Raul, they are all now geniuses for this decision. Or maybe it goes the other way and it doesn't play out as well as you would like, and then it looks like a pretty bad decision. Right now, at this point, it hasn't been made official. You know, Jorge Mas did not go into detail as to who it would be, but all signs are pointing to it. Multiple reports from Argentina. So it's just a matter of, I'm sure, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and getting it, you know, ink on paper. But if and when this comes to pass, I think this is a step down. This is a step down. I think they could have done better with their head coaching decision. But again, if this is to make Lionel Messi happy or to keep him happy,
then there was no other choice.
Then, I mean, you could force the hand. You could, you know, but do you really want to get into that type of tussle? Do you really? I mean, you could. You can't force. You could. I mean, do you think Messi was pulling this at PSG, deciding who his head coach is? No.
Not at PSG.
Right, but because it's Inter Miami,
someplace else.
Because it's Inter Miami, because it's a brand new team, because it's Major League Soccer, where his star power is much higher than everything else, then yeah, he has a big say in who the head coach could be, and that's what it seems like happened here. If and when they announce him, and we formally get to have that press conference with Javier Mascherano, I'm looking forward to hearing what spin PR talk we'll get about how they landed on him and how this was the best decision, porque Javier Mascherano ha jugado en el nivel más alto y conoce el ambiente argentino y hay muchos argentinos y hace un rico asado y los jugadores le gustan el asado. So I'm very curious to hear what we get. We'll get some PR spin, absolutely, as to why he was chosen. But
that's going to be interesting, and they're going to have to work on the timeline once again, you know, just so that, you know, we're not taking it through, you know, step by step and trying to figure out where did they, you know, they had a missed step. But I would say, you know, when it comes to young players, you know, which is something that they did mention as well, you know, about the young players, because Jorge Mas was asked, I can't remember who it was, but he was asked about, you know, MLS experience, which, you know, it goes along, you know, media trying to find or get closer to the idea that, yes, it's Mascherano, the next head coach for Inter Miami. And Jorge Mas said, like, oh, well, you know what? No, it's not as important to have MLS experience. I mean, seriously, you know, it's important to have experience with young players and not as important to have experience in MLS. If that doesn't tell you Mascherano, I mean, I don't know what you're looking at here.
Francisco Garcia says, Franco, they used an
Oh,
artificial
yeah.
intelligence. Remember. Jose,
Yeah.
you're laughing. Please share with the people why you are laughing.
No, you take this one. You take this one.
One of the ways that Inter Miami, Jorge Mas said that Inter Miami conducted their coaching search, a tool that they used was AI, was artificial intelligence. Now, he did not elaborate on what that means or how they did it. So right now we're laughing because it sounds funny, but maybe there was some tool that just helped
come
them.
on now.
I mean, maybe,
Come
Jose,
on
maybe. We don't.
now.
That's a question to ask him the day that Javier Mascherano standing there with the jersey and the introductory press conference. It's a question for Jorge Mas. Hey, Jorge, a couple of weeks ago you said that you used AI. How specifically did you use AI to come up with Javier Mascherano? Were you looking for a beard, a guy that looks tough on the sideline? What were you looking for there when you used AI? I mean, we're laughing, but listen, technology is ever changing, it's ever evolving, and maybe it was
but no, not yet. I mean, look, it's Messi's decision. I mean, he wanted his friend. He wanted another friend on the team. I can't. AI, I get it. I mean, it's all over the place now, but it will be hard to believe, and it will be one more reason for me, again, taking the place of an Inter Miami fan, that would give me another reason to be concerned, disappointed about what's coming up, because those decisions. I mean, the human element, it's big. It's big. You need to get that chemistry, especially from the ownership. You're gonna have to ask questions. Jorge Mas is gonna want to talk to Mascherano and ask him, why did you do this? I mean, he's telling everybody that he wants a team that attacks constantly, that scores goals. He want to live or die by scoring goals and playing an attacking mindset.
We'll get there, Jose.
You need to talk
We'll
to
get
that
there.
person.
We'll get there. Tank721 with a lot of laughing emojis says AI is the future. Maybe they also use the club football manager game. So maybe that's how they came up. They're like, oh, this coach would give it, like they simulated 10 seasons with like 10 different candidates, and they're like, well, the best one is Javier Mascherano. So maybe he's our best bet to being coach.
And really,
joke,
maybe AI knows some information that we don't know about. Maybe Mascherano won something someplace that AI knows. The AI tournament won by Mascherano.
Well, listen, we joke, but I'm curious to hear in more detail how that happened. Kala FC says nepotism CF. So, I mean, listen, Inter Miami says, they're a lot about La Familia. That's what the supporters groups in the North Stand at Chase Stadium are called. I mean, a recurring theme has been nepotism, cronyism, are people being appointed jobs and given positions because they know someone who knows someone. And by and large, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's a fair label for Inter Miami. This will not help dissuade or help that label change or that perception to vanish, because it's clear that Lionel Messi had a big part in this decision, if not the biggest part in this decision, which then leads us to the question, Jose, which we talked about today. Did Tata Martino get fired? Again, not information because we don't have it, but your supposition. Just to say, did he get fired because Lionel Messi maybe wasn't happy with the playoff exit, wasn't happy with how things went, and he said, you know what, I want a new head coach. Again, on the outside, you could say you guys are being conspiracy theorists. But look, when you're a journalist, you gotta always question things. You gotta ask why and how, and when things don't add up, you can't just take it at face value. You have to have un olfato, like a nose for things, to question it. And then when you get information, then you present that information. Right now, we don't have the information, but it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. Yeah. So, Jose, going back to your supposition, do you think that's what happened?
I think it's fair to talk about it, especially because we're there. We see things, up close. But yes, I would agree that he got fired. And if I have to think, if I have to go back and make an assessment as to why they could have made this decision, I would point out to the team not having having to rely on a 5-man backline. I think that would be something that I would consider, and especially because what that means to Messi. I think we saw it. I don't think Messi wants to finish his career playing that style in particular. We can have a separate conversation as to whether it worked, whether it was good or bad, or what did it mean tactically in terms of results in the immediate future. But I really doubt that Messi wants to play that way for one full year. It's just not fun. It's not fun, for him. He wants to have the ball, and that's how he can make a difference, in MLS. If he doesn't have a ball, he's going to get 2 or 3 chances a game, probably scoring 1 or 2. But, really don't have an impact overall in the game, constantly have that consistency. I think that's not an ideal scenario for him, and obviously that's not an ideal scenario for Inter Miami. Having a good having a good system defensively is not necessarily something that we see very often in MLS, and there's a reason why. Because this league, all the money is for goals. Teams want to score as many goals as possible, even though they concede 3 and they win by 4-3, 5-3, they don't care. And I think Messi aligns in a sense with that thought process, because obviously he wants to be relevant. And the only way he can be relevant is with him scoring goals. So I think that would point out to that as the main reason. Obviously not winning, championships this year is something that that I would think crossed Jorge Mas' thought process, because they were not even close. I mean, and I don't know if we have mentioned this before in the pod, because I think we touched on it, but frankly, they were not even close. I mean, they were not even close in Conca Champions. They were not even close in Leagues Cup, which at this point mattered the least of them all, and they were not even close in the MLS playoffs. So it's not like you lost the final, or you were really, really this close to moving on. No, you were not even close. So I that's big. And I think we mentioned that in the previous pod. In any other place in the world, Tata would have gotten fired,
Right.
no doubt. Because
You said that.
are
You
the
said that
best
on the
team.
last. You said that on the last pod.
Right. In any other place, I didn't expect him to get fired here, and I still don't think it's the right decision based on who they got after.
Time out. I just noticed that you took your glasses off. What happened? You got serious here? What's going on?
Okay, here we go. Let's put them on again.
What happened? You decided
my
to just
eyes
take.
just needed a little bit of rest. I don't wear them very often. Maybe Andrea is proud of me right now.
Going back to and away from your glasses, but back to Mascherano. I mean, the initial reaction I've seen from some people, it's not one of optimism or excitement. There's a lot of questioning going on right now from what I'm seeing. Maybe there's a different sector of social media and the general public that I'm not seeing that's very, very excited about Javier Mascherano being the next head coach. But that's not what I'm seeing here. Seeing a lot of concern, a lot of questions. I mean, listen, to be fair, right? We both said on the last pod that anywhere else in the world, Tata Martino probably gets fired, right? For not achieving the ultimate goal of winning MLS Cup, especially when they didn't win any other tournament. Yes, they won the Supporter Shield and they set the record for most points in MLS regular season, but they did not win a significant trophy in a competition. MLS Cup, Champions Cup.
Can I say something when it comes to that particular moment? Because I've heard that no, but winning the Supporter Shield and getting the points record was very important and a very good accomplishment for this team. I'll tell you this: Orlando right now would not trade their position in the second round of the playoffs for the points record or for the Supporter Shield. There's no team right now fighting for the championship that will switch places with Inter Miami. So, just to be clear and to put it out there, the Supporter Shield, it was great in the moment, but the main goal of having the Supporter Shield was having home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It didn't work out that way for Inter Miami, so sorry, but no. The points record in the Supporter Shield means absolutely nothing in terms of, having success for Inter Miami this year. Sorry.
Skrilla says, don't have y'all standards high next year. It's looking scary. I mean, there's legit concern. There's legit
I'm telling you,
questions. Yes. Like you said something earlier here that maybe it wasn't on the pod. Maybe it was earlier in our lunch. If they had gone from Tata Martino to another proven coach, maybe not with MLS experience, but another proven coach who has won something at the higher levels in Europe somewhere, then maybe you'd be like, all right, I can see why.
Yeah.
I can see why. Here, it's clear that it's not necessarily an upgrade. It's just appeasing Messi. Just making him happy or keeping him happy. And again, his fingerprints are all over the team. Let's not forget that Lionel Messi, when he retires, whenever that is, whether it's in 2026, in 2027, 2038, whenever he retires, he will be, as of that point, a part owner of Inter Miami. Right now, he's a player for Inter Miami, but his contract stipulates that he will be a part owner, a minority owner, but he'll be a part owner. Jose, right now, he might only have the title of player, but he's effectively, in my eyes, player/owner because he's impacting things across the board on the sporting side, away from the field. I mean, so much has changed in the year and a half that he's been here. A lot, like personnel, not even just players, not even just coaching, not even technical staff. We're talking about in general. In general, this talks about the chefs, the cooks, employees in and around the club. A lot of faces have come and gone. So Messi's has had a big influence in that. Also, let's listen to that comment. Let's listen to that comment from Jorge Mas earlier, because you had a bone to pick with it with regards to his profile for the next coach, for how Inter Miami will play. So let's listen to that and then we can dive into your thoughts.
Ser entrenador de nuestro club hacen falta características muy específicas. Uno, tenemos un club que tiene una combinación de uno de los mejores talentos generacionales en cada posición, y Leo Messi, el mejor jugador que ha jugado fútbol en la historia, en combinación jugando en una plantilla de 11 con muchachos muy jóvenes, tanto de nuestra cantera, como lo son Benjamín Cremacci, Noah Allen, David Ruiz, Ian Frey, tantos otros muchachos que hemos cogido a través del draft colegial, que tuvo un año extraordinario, como Yannick Bright, promesas jóvenes como lo son, y será cuando regresa ahora Facundo Farías, Diego Gómez, Toto Áviles, Redondo. Eso es una combinación importante de tener un entrenador que tenga la experiencia de poder entrenar muchachos jóvenes en una liga muy competitiva, una liga competitiva por diseño, por ciertas restricciones que existen por la plantilla, y al mismo tiempo puedan tomar y mejorar el club en el ser, porque el estilo de fútbol que nosotros queremos para un Inter Miami es un estilo de ataque, es un estilo de presionar al rival, de anotar goles, de jugar un fútbol bonito de posesión, dado el talento que tenemos. Y antes que me hagan la pregunta, y Tata habló porque vi mucho las preguntas, si una línea de 5, si una línea de 4, si Atlanta o no. Este es un club que siempre va a atacar. Nosotros no vamos a jugar un fútbol donde nos parqueamos atrás a jugar partidos 0-0, 1-0. Eso no va a ser el estilo de Inter Miami. Y nos moriremos de esa manera o viviremos y tendremos éxito de esa manera. Pero las características de un entrenador es esa, se le va a esperar ganar.
Jose, you're raising your eyebrows, you're shaking your head. I don't necessarily agree with what you're about to say, but let's hear it. The floor is yours. What's going on?
No, I mean, that that last part is something that it just shows how Jorge Mas, he's just he has a lot to learn about the game, and how this game is played. The ownership just can't go out there and tell
Why
how his
not?
team's going to play,
Why not?
because
It's
it's
his
the
team.
head coach. It's the head coach who makes the final decision. That is the head coach's job. He that's if Tata Martino wanted to play a 6-man backline, it's his decision. They can make a decision as to who they will hire, but the job of the ownership is to put the money in, to put the investment in. If Tata Martino decides to play with a 6-man backline and they win everything, I mean, it's on Tata Martino. That's his decision. He brought the players. He knows. Jorge Mas, he just needs to pay everybody. But, that's why, a few months from now, if for some reason Javier Mascherano is not playing to that style, then there will be a conversation as to, oh, wait, but Jorge Mas said that he wanted his team to play like this, and that. And Javier Mascherano is doing the complete opposite. That's exactly why the ownership doesn't open their mouth and go in a press conference telling everybody how they want their team to play. Because they are not coaches. They are not the head coaches, and they need to respect the role that everybody has on its own within the organization. So, I mean, maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm old school and I don't like that. But I just don't get the sense or the benefit of the ownership going out there and saying how their team should play. Because if that's the case, then why hire a head coach? Just have the ownership put the starting lineup out there. Just go ahead and do it. I mean, if that's what you think, if you really know how far your team can go in terms of how you want this team to play with the roster that you have right now, then they probably don't need a head coach. They have an ownership that can pretty much do everything.
Steve
So,
Munoz says maybe it was not Messi that chose Mascherano. Maybe it was Chat GBT. Maybe.
Would you
Maybe.
believe that I Chat GPT came to me like 2 weeks ago? Like somebody sent me a message about something, another topic, and I asked like, "What is that?" And that person told me that's Chat GPT. I had no idea that existed.
It's actually it's actually a pretty cool tool. Very cool. Fairly new, I think. Fairly new, but yeah.
I need to learn about Chat GPT.
Going back to what you were saying about Jorge Mas and his involvement. I like that he's very involved. I like that he's a local owner. I like that he's present. I like that he's involved. I've covered teams like the New York Red Bulls where they have absentee ownership. The owner is in a different country, never to be seen, just hires people to make decisions, and those people hire other people to make decisions, and it just leaves that lack of personal feel. Not from a media standpoint, just from an overall standpoint, right? Like some of our viewers, some of our listeners, I'm sure have run into Jorge Mas at some point, either at games or at events or whatever, and they've probably either taken pictures or shared their concerns. Like, I like that Jorge Mas is around. I like that he makes himself available. Like, for example, and I know you agree with me here.
Available. This is the
I
first
know,
time
no,
I've talked to him in months.
I know that you will agree with me here. Today, the press conference with them was a few questions, and then it was getting wrapped up. An unsettled member of the media wanted to get a question in. No questions asked, regardless of how he did it. So while they were trying to wrap up the question, he kind of made it known he was going to ask a question. Jorge Mas saw that, pointed to him, and said, "Go ahead, ask your question." So Jorge Mas prevented the press conference from ending to continue to answer questions. I answered that question, and then he answered like 5 more, which I think allowed you to get a question as well. So I like that from Jorge Mas. I like that he makes himself available. He talked about a lot of things, which we won't get to today because we're short on time. We'll dive into it here in the offseason. Talked about wanting to play in Copa Libertadores at some point. He talked about
I'm running into trouble here. I'm running into trouble. How in the world is Inter Miami? Okay, so he talked about wanting to win Conca Champions. He talked about wanting to win Leagues Cup. He talked about wanting to win Club World Cup. He talked about wanting to win MLS Cup and repeat again as the Supporters Shield. And also he brings up Copa Libertadores. I mean, he's lying. I mean,
What is he?
in
But
the
what is he
world-
lying about? What is he
how
lying
in the
about?
world can you explain to me where exactly in the schedule are they going to fit Copa Libertadores for Inter Miami?
No, but
How?
he didn't.
How?
Jose, he didn't say next year that he wants to be in Copa Libertadores. He
Then
said,
don't talk about it. That's the main
what?
thing.
Why?
He
Why?
talks about Copa Libertadores because he wants to get the attention from the South American media that are probably talking, about Messi playing Copa Libertadores. If he's not
Oh, yeah,
talking about next year,
So you gotta
let
wait.
me
Add that
remind
part.
you,
Add
the
that part.
contract
Jose, hold
ends
on.
next year
Jose,
for
hold
Lionel
on.
Messi. So
Add
don't
that
talk
part.
about Copa Libertadores. That's your dream. That you have the
Jose-
freedom to dream, but you don't have to say it out there in a press conference
Jose,
setting.
hold on. Add to that because he talked about that. He mentioned Messi when he started talking about Copa Libertadores. He said that's the
Right.
one competition that Messi has not played in his career, which
Right.
that's not
You're
true.
telling me-
Technically, he hasn't played in Libertadores, la Sudamericana. But
he
anyway,
just doesn't know. He doesn't know. But
No.
you're telling me that it's not going to be next year. So
Look.
you're basically telling me that Messi's going to be playing for 4 or 5 more years. Is
No,
that
no,
the
no.
case?
Ho-
I mean,
Jose.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Jose, 2 years ago, we were on this pod and we were talking about Messi coming. You would have thought that's no way in hell, but you said that you didn't think it was happening, and I
So
told
you
you.
believe Messi will play Copa Libertadores?
Listen, I'm not ruling anything out.
Oh
Well,
my God!
listen, I am not ruling anything out for the next 2 years. While Messi is here, I'm not ruling it out, man. I'm just not going to rule it out because you don't have to agree with this, Jose, and maybe the viewers and the listeners don't have to agree with this. But my sensation is that this is a very pivotal point for football in this country. And right now, it's gearing up to 2026 World Cup. Aside from Messi and the el fichaje, the signing of him to Major League Soccer, the signing of him to Inter Miami. Aside from that, they've missed the mark. They haven't made the waves they need to make heading into that world, into this 2026 World Cup, which will be in large part, on U.S. soil.
So
there's
when
things,
exactly is Messi going to play Copa
there
Libertadores?
needs to be things
me about
done.
it.
Hold on, there needs to be things done to help try to push the game forward here in this country. And I think this is the moment that there's going to be changes. There's been talk about recently, a few weeks ago, it was reported about the calendar potentially going to a fall and spring calendar, aligning it more with Europe as opposed to how it is right now. That's a big change. There's also talk about maybe there's going to be different changes with the roster construction. That would be another big change, depending on how much change is allowed.
But you're against the clock.
Now the Club World Cup is coming to the United States, and Inter Miami is a hosting team. They will compete in that tournament. They will compete against the likes of Real Madrid or Milan.
But that's real. That's real. We know
Jose,
that's
but a year
happening.
ago,
we have a draw.
Jose, a year ago, would you have said
year.
it's happening? A year ago, would you have been like, "Oh no, yeah, that's great, that's that"? You would have thought it was a dream.
About the
You
Club
would have
World Cup? No,
Yeah,
we always knew. We always knew they would use if they needed to use Leagues Cup to get Messi to play the Club World Cup. We knew that. We knew that FIFA wanted Inter Miami, Messi, to play the Club World Cup. That we knew all about. But Copa Libertadores, talking about Copa Libertadores right now, how real? I mean,
look.
What's the percentage? What's the confidence level that you have right now? How much
don't
would you be
think-
willing to bet that
Me?
Messi will play Copa Libertadores with Inter Miami? I mean,
I
come
would
on.
put. I mean, I'm not a betting person, but I would put whatever 33% is in odds. I don't know, 3-1, 1-3. I don't know how you. I'm not a betting person. I would put 33% on it happening by 2026. That's what I bet. That's what I think.
Are you telling me that if Messi is playing in 2026, which is the World Cup year, he will risk playing the World Cup for playing in Copa Libertadores? Did you
risk?
forget?
What do you mean risk?
Did you forget this year? And he just confirmed this, by the way, a few weeks ago. He confirmed that he was taking care of himself early in the year so that he could be available for Copa Libertadores, which means, preseason, he was taking it lightly. Early in the season in MLS, he was taking it lightly. Conca Champions, he was taking it lightly because his mindset was playing in Copa America. So you're telling me that a year and a half later, his mindset all of a sudden is going to change and it's going to be all out from the get-go in 2026 and he's not going to be thinking about the World Cup and playing with Argentina at a highest level, which
What is that?
he's already
Oh,
struggling.
so what? So did he not think about Champions League before he was going to go play in the World Cup? I mean, you can do two things at once. It's not like,
Yes,
oh,
but
I
the
can only
problem-
play Libertadores. I can't play in the World Cup, or I can only play in the World Cup, but I can't play in
but the
Libertadores.
Champions League, you have a responsibility in Champions League. He doesn't care as much about what he needs to do with Inter Miami. That's the reality of things. When you're playing Champions League, everybody's looking at you. You
Jose,
have a
nobody
responsibility to win.
said.
Not
Jose,
here.
no one is saying that Inter Miami is to win Copa Libertadores. That they have to just competing in it internationally. That would be a step forward for MLS.
So Messi
that
is
would be a
just
step forward.
Messi will be okay with just going and showing up and getting crushed. Don't you think they are concerned right now? How the roster is at this point with
Jorge
Inter
Mas-
Miami's roster?
Jorge Mas
Do you
talked
think
today.
they are concerned about the Club World Cup?
Jorge Mas spoke today about that, about how
Right.
they
There's
want
concern,
to build a
right?
more competitive team. Right, but there's
So Messi's not going to just show up at Copa Libertadores. He's
Jose,
going to want to compete.
I think you're getting away from the point, which is it could happen. I think it could happen. You think it's a flat out lie. You think it's not possible.
It's a
I think
lie.
it could happen. I think it could. And look, I think
Look.
Jorge Mas, let me add this. Jorge Mas is a very intelligent man. There's a reason why he's the owner of the team. Yes, he has money, but he's an intelligent person. To me, this is my supposition, not inside information, my supposition. How he said it today, the way he phrased it, the way he packaged it with Messi not being in that tournament, to me, is a sales pitch. It's going to be part of his sales pitch that when he tries to sit down with Messi and renew Lionel Messi, he's going to tell him, hey, you've never played in the Libertadores. We're going to bring the Libertadores, or we're going to get into the Libertadores starting in 2026. We want you as part of it. We want you in it. We want you to be part of the first MLS team that plays in that. Like that, I think that's going to be part of his sales pitch, which is why I think he packaged that into there, which is why he said, Messi's never played in that tournament. We want to be in that tournament. I think it's going to be part of his negotiating tactic to try to get Messi to resign. He did say today, and close it out with this, he expects Messi to be back in 2026 as Inter Miami's number 10 when they open their new stadium in Miami.
It's going to be a tough sell initially. It's going to be a very, very tough sell to try to convince Messi just by the fact of playing Copa Libertadores. And for that to have any weight on, they actually need to perform in the Club World Cup. And also, and the most important thing, they need to find a way to qualify.
Simon Evans, a friend of the show, Jorge Mas needs to watch some Copa Libertadores. Can you imagine that Inter Miami defense against the best teams from?
Absolutely. This is what I'm telling you. This is just him talking to get all the Argentine outlets. He wants them to start dreaming about Messi playing against Boca or River in La Bombonera and El Monumental. I'm telling you. This is just smoke.
Disagree.
Nonsense.
Disagree.
Complete nonsense.
Jose, the rules are going to change. I said this on the last pod. I shared it. I did share it as information that I've gotten. The rules are changing this winter, my friend. The roster budget will improve for teams. They will be able to spend more. How much more? I don't know. I think that's still being decided. But when you're competing at the Club World Cup, look, Inter Miami in preseason. Yes, it was preseason, but they played international, and they got embarrassed by teams in the Middle East. This is with Messi on the field, Suarez, Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets. They got embarrassed. Now you're going to go play competitive games in international competitions. No quieres pasar un papelón. You don't want to get embarrassed like that again. You don't want to have that embarrassment on the international stage. They're going to have to allow teams to spend more money. Not saying they're going to give unlimited spending, but there's definitely going to be a push in the direction of spending more than what you can spend now. I don't know if that means there's 5 DPs on a team. I don't know if that means that there's going to be 20 million in salary budget for each team. I don't know what exactly it means, but I will sit here and tell you next year the budget will be higher and Inter Miami will be able to invest more.
Let's say they gave Inter Miami 60 Ps. Okay, so you tell me who's going to take out Luis Suarez? Who's going to take out Sergio Busquets? Who's going to take out Jordi Alba? who's going to take out Lionel Messi. That's the core of the team. That will not change, my friend. That will not change. That's a fact. Those 4 players will start the first game of the Club World Cup if they are available. So no matter who they bring, those 4 players are going to be your core, which means you're still not going to have enough. Inter Miami didn't have enough to win a 3-game series against Atlanta United a few weeks ago. What makes you think that if all of a sudden MLS allows teams to, have 60 piece, Inter Miami will be successful? There are so many other elements.
But I don't think it's just going to be on the top end.
It doesn't matter.
I don't think it's
MLS
going to be on the
changes
top
rules,
end.
they're still not going to compete with Premier League teams. They're
Of
still
course
not going to compete
they
with
don't need
higher
to.
level.
They don't need to go from this step to this step. They just need to go from this step to this step. They need to take steps forward. And I think with an owner like Jorge Mas, who pushes the envelope, who tries to push to allow the league to give the teams more freedom to spend more. He's an ambitious owner. He's competitive. He got Messi here. Right? That's not a small task, but he got Messi here.
Yeah, that's very good. But yes, still he had a horrible preseason, and he approved of that. And Messi agrees with that as well. And he didn't win anything so far. So, moral victories are fun and all, but at this point, I'm just gonna.
It's about pushing the game forward, man. It's about pushing the game forward.
I'm just gonna judge him. Well, he's pushing Messi's brand forward. That's what he's doing, not pushing the game. The game hasn't changed at all since Messi arrived. What has changed is more eyeballs on Apple TV whenever Messi's available. What has changed is more people in the seat of Chase Stadium once Messi is available. The game still stands at the same level for the rest of the country. That's just a reality.
Correct, which is why changes need to be implemented. Francisco Garcia says, Florentino Perez doesn't tell Ancelotti how to play. So it's going back to the previous talking point that you said you don't really like.
He probably gives a hint, but he doesn't say it out in a press conference setting. See?
Listen. Now, again, head coach, sporting director, owner. Jorge Mas is not just the owner. He's also kind of a sporting director.
What?
He doesn't make...
How?
Hold on. I'm not saying he's qualified to be a sporting director, but in the structure of the organization, he's not maybe handpicking the players. But if he wants the team...
You will probably trust him making decisions as a sporting director.
Again, I'm not saying... Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's picking players, but if he wants, he's the owner of the team, and he wants, I want this team to be attack-minded. I'm going to get a sporting director that follows with those ethos, follows that vision. So I'm going to find someone that will do that. And that person's going to find a head coach. Like, it trickles down. Maybe he's a little too involved on the sporting side. Maybe you could argue that. But I see him as owner / part-time sporting director in terms of how he wants the team to play. He wants the team to be attack-minded. All right? Like, look at Red Bull teams, right? Red Bull teams, they're owned by a corporation. It's an energy drink. And yet all their teams want to play this upbeat, high-tempo, high-pressing style, right? It can trickle down.
Yeah, but that's not the highest level, Franco. It doesn't work that way. Top teams in the world, it doesn't work that way. If Jorge Mas wants to do it that way, then that means he's not running things the right way. Because there's a standard already, in the world of football. I know it's different in the NFL, in the NBA, fine. But, football is different. And that's not the standard. You don't have the ownership, running everything the way I like it, and I'm bigger than everything, and I have the money, so I'm going to do this and this and that. You need to show some respect. You hire people, you need to hire people and respect the reasons why you hire those people. You want to be elite, you want to be the top of the top, and you want to have the top talent, you need to respect. And that's why he's respecting, in a sense, this is a good step. He's respecting Messi's decision of hiring Javier Mascherano. This is a good step.
Didn't you just go against that whole thing? Sean Callahan said it as best as maybe I as I could have said it, and I didn't say it this way. Mas wants to be like Jerry Jones. He just wants to be a very involved owner. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay,
it's a
fine,
different sport.
fine. But
It's
I
a
have no
different
problem with
sport.
that. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that.
Well,
Like you have to know.
Then he should be. Then
he has to
then
know his place. He has to
we
know his place as the
probably-
owner.
Then this is not Inter Miami. This is Mas CF. Then, because what happens if he sells the team? Who's bigger, Jorge Mas or Inter Miami? That's the question. We've seen that before. Let's just remember this is this is American soccer landscape. Ownership changes. It's not as well established as we have seen before. But if this is going to be Mas CF, then once Jorge Mas moves on from
Who says he's
football-
ever going to move on? How do you know?
No,
he's gonna move on?
it could be possible. This is MLS. This is not. We've seen ownership changes.
The sky could be pink tomorrow. It could be possible.
Well,
Could be
have you seen
possible.
the Marlins are changing ownership, right? You're comparing to some other American sports. The Marlins are changing ownership. They changed ownership recently. So why couldn't that happen to an even less established league like MLS?
Nah, we're getting away from the point.
Just you don't get scared, but it could happen.
Alberto Manuel Castillo says English people know that. He's asking English people know that Mascherano is bad. No, good question. I mean, like I said, the initial reaction I've seen from most people is not positive. Not like, oh yes, Mascherano is going to be our head coach. Can't wait to see his free flowing attacking style and his free flowing attacking brand. But we'll see what exactly happens with that part of Inter Miami in terms of their tempo, their style of play. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting.
It's very interesting.
World Cup,
which is something that we talked also this afternoon. Is that this is Tata's team, right? So as much as Mascherano wants to come in and try to change things, there's already a core group of players that he's not going to be able to get rid of, and especially in a short amount of time that he's going to have. I mean, he's really going to have to make a quick turnaround and move to South Florida and start talking to players. Obviously, they're going on vacation right now, but it's a very quick turnaround. We're almost at the end of November, and he's gonna have to find a way to regroup this team. I'm assuming based on what Jorge Mas said that we're not gonna see the 5-man backline anytime soon. And so he's gonna have to find a way to go back to the 4-man backline and have it be
I don't think that's what he was saying though. That wasn't my read on what he was saying. I think my read on what he was saying is that the perception, because they play with a back five, could be that they're defensive minded, but they're not that they don't want to be viewed as a defensive minded team. They just but they can play. You can play a back five, and I agree that if you play a back five, you're clearly trying to focus a bit on the defensive side. But you could be a very attack minded team with a back five. Like Jordi Alba was, essentially another winger, right? He was essentially the left winger.
They were not an offensive-minded team when they played with a 5-man backline. The reason why they play with a 5-man backline is because they don't want to get scored on. And by the way, they went to this 5-man backline once Messi and Suarez was not available in the Copa America, which for me, I think it was a very good stretch in the season. But what I'm saying is that he's going to have to find a way to to just be to put on the field an attacking minded team, which I don't know, based on his concepts, if he has enough right now. Obviously, having Facu Farias back, that would be a good asset, and we'll see what they do in terms of who leaves and who stays, and where exactly do they look for reinforcements? Are they going to be more looking for MLS players, which Mascherano probably don't know a lot about, or are they going to continue to build another Argentine team here in MLS? We're probably going to end up with 16 players from Argentina.
I think we're going to see significant change this offseason. Significant change because of that reason. This is Tata Martino's team, and it's going to take some time to make it Javier Mascherano's team. But I think the work's going to start very early this winter, and I think it's going to start.
So you think they're probably
They're probably using AI right now to identify
AI.
their next 4 transfer targets. That's probably what they're doing right now as we speak. Jorge Mas is listening to the podcast and he's typing away on ChatGPT and trying to find out who the next players are. Jay Vasquez in the comment section says, would any other MLS team even look at or even look at a U20 coach with no pro experience to be their coach? Why does Miami, who's supposed to be the premier showcase team for MLS, hire an under 20 coach? So the first part of that question is yes. And here's a little bit of MLS history, a little bit of MLS knowledge for you if you were an Inter Miami fan but not an MLS fan beforehand. This might also be a free learning lesson for anybody on Inter Miami that wants to come up with a PR spin during Javier Mascherano's press conference. But Veljko Paunovic, Jose, you should know the name. He was an under 20 coach for Serbia, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Serbia. And he got hired with no previous first team club soccer experience. He got hired to be the Chicago Fire head coach. So it's not unprecedented in Major League Soccer. Now, are the Chicago Fire a beacon of excellence in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years of MLS? Probably not. But that it's not completely unprecedented. It has happened before.
Yeah, and I think there's one more example. I think Tab Ramos had a similar. I think Tab Ramos, when he got hired by Houston Dynamo, he had a similar scenario. Although I think the national team that he coached was the under 23, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, similar. So it does happen in MLS.
Before we wrap up, because we've gone long and I know Jose, you got to go. Until we hear from Mascherano, we're not going to really know what his style of play is. But we do know from a results standpoint, hasn't been great for him at the youth levels. Now, results at the youth levels don't necessarily mean anything, right? Like, you could be very successful at the youth levels, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful at the next level, right? So I'm curious what his playing style will be. I imagine it's not going to be defensive-minded, right? I imagine it's not going to be...
It can't be. I mean, we already know. He needs to follow, according to your thought process, he doesn't have a say on to how he wants to.
I don't think he gets hired. I don't think he gets hired if he thinks it's defensive minded. If he's going to be defensive.
Well, so then you already know.
What does it? I mean, but does he want to play a 4-3-3? Is he a 4-2-3-1 guy with Messi playing as the 10?
It's going to be an attacking-minded team. Now, I don't want to hear ownership complain about them losing 5-4, or they're going to concede goals. They're probably going to have. They're not going to have the best defense on MLS or any other competitions. So I just look. It's very, very, very hard for me to accept something like that. Maybe I'm old school. But playing that attacking mindset, when you don't even have a coach, it's hard for me to take that. Very hard for me to take that. I know you like Jorge Mas, and I give credit Jorge Mas for a lot of things. I think he's the one responsible for Inter Miami to be what it is right now. Not only in terms of bringing Messi, but just before that, he saved the team. I do agree with you that sometimes in terms of newsworthy stories, he gives us more than what he should. So just to be clear, I think he has done some pretty good stuff here. But mainly the points that I disagree with him are, football related. That's where it gets to me.
But he doesn't really talk football. He doesn't really talk like tactics or anything.
We were just talking about this right now. We're just talking about football. Not saying out there, how I want my team to play, how it should play.
But if that's what he wants, what's wrong with that? He's the owner. If he was like,
just
I want my
to yourself. Be
but
a real
why?
Owner.
But why?
Because he needs to be a real owner. He needs to be a real owner, not the best friend of the media.
No. But if his vision, like he says, we want to sign big names, and they sign big names. If his vision is,
especially after you fire the head coach, I mean, it's just the timing is just horrible on that.
If he said, I want to sign big names, and he comes through on that, right? If he says, I want a team that wins, and the team starts to win more, if he says I want a team that's attack minded, I don't see what's wrong with that as an owner. It's what you want. That's why you're investing your money. Now, I think you still need to know there's a fine line between overstepping your boundaries. Your sporting director needs to still do his job the best way he can with what you want, and the head coach needs to do. It's the same thing, right? Sporting director hires a coach and says, I want a coach of this profile that can do this, this, and this. Now the coach has to operate as best as he can within the structure of that. But it's the same thing here, Jose. I don't see.
Let's just agree to disagree, because you're gonna defend Jorge Mas even for if we remain in the pot for 6 more days or years, you're still gonna continue to defend him for 6 more years. So let's just agree to disagree. Let's see what happens with Copa Libertadores. I seriously doubt it. I just seriously doubt that's gonna happen. But you remain hopeful. That'd be great. That'd be great.
I don't remain hopeful. I think we could see it happen with MLS. Right? Like we're already seeing Jose. Just listen. We're already seeing, and we have seen in recent years, more. What's the word? Synergy between CONMEBOL, South America's federation, and CONCACAF. We've seen it. There's been 2 Copa Americas now in the last 8 years that have included multiple teams from both federations. We've seen that. Now we're seeing a Club World Cup. I think you're going to see the things trend in that direction.
So you're telling me that CONCACAF will cancel Conca Champions just to give Messi the opportunity to play Copa Libertadores? That's basically what you're telling me, because I don't see Copa Libertadores taking any Central American team to play. Maybe you
see just 2 teams. 2 Major League Soccer teams go to the Copa Libertadores. The top 2 the top one in each conference.
Okay, just go ahead and tell me when exactly are you going to fit the tournament in? If you want to play Conca Champions, if you want to play the Club World Cup, if you want to play Leagues Cup, if you want to win the Supporters Shield, if you want to play the MLS playoffs, just tell me when exactly are you going to play those matches.
That's for them to figure out. That's for them to figure out. But I think you're seeing it.
To figure out, there's not enough room. And where exactly are you going to? Because Messi this year didn't play a lot. So are you telling me that not next year, but the following year in 2026, which by the way also has the World Cup, Messi's gonna find a way to go ahead and play? It's very hard for me to believe.
All right, we'll wrap up the show. Very quickly, who are some of the players that we could see go? Who do you think are the top candidates? We did this exercise during our little lunch today. Who are the players that who you think could be gone? Who are the top of the list?
Julian Gressel is at top of the list because Julian Gressel was here, because of Tata, obviously, and now that Tata is gone, I think Julian Gressel. I don't see him coming back.
The writing's on the wall with him, right? To me, you can kind of read into why he's been so vocal. I mean, he's been doing a podcast all year, but why he was so vocal about the team and the makeup of the team. Like, there was something excuse me. There was something that he talked about, which I would like to reemphasize here. I know we're going long, but he was asked about the playoff exit, the playoff loss to Atlanta, and how the locker room was like in the aftermath. And he said it was very quiet, like very surreal. Some guys muttered some things to themselves, but it was a very silent locker room. I think he even said that Tata Martino did not say anything to the team after the loss. That is very interesting. That is very interesting. Because I mean, well, there's not much to say after you're eliminated. It might speak to the dynamics in that locker room. Maybe.
Well, I think Julian Gressel, just by the fact that he goes out there and having those podcasts and stuff like that,
we talked about that. Jose, you and I talked about that earlier in the year.
Yeah.
We're like, not just about Julian Gressel. Like, we're talking about bigger picture here, but it leads into what we're discussing. What is the dynamic of that locker room? Like, we know about the Cuatro Fantásticos. We know about the Fantastic Four, the Barcelona quartet. We know that they're tight. But what about the rest of the group? Is it the Argentines are over here? Maybe some of them sprinkle in with some of the Cuatro Fantásticos.
Well, you know, the
Is
way
Campana part of that group, even though he's not Argentine? Are the American guys and the European guys like? I jokingly told you today, I'm like, I'm starting to picture Robert Taylor in a corner in that locker room, just twiddling his thumb, sitting there by himself with no one talking to him. Like, it's like, how is the makeup of that locker room? Like, credit to Phil Neville, right? For all his shortcomings as a head coach and tactically and everything, he did help build in that locker room. One of the positives from his time was that he helped build real camaraderie for the most part. Gonzalo Higuain didn't necessarily buy in. Rodolfo Pizarro didn't necessarily buy in. Blaise Matuidi, he maybe he didn't manage the big personalities in an ideal way, although Gonzalo Higuain turned things around at the end. But in terms of the overall locker room, with DeAndre Yedlin, he found ways to make that locker room a tighter knit group. With this group, they're much more talented, but are they as tight knit? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think, we got a sense a little bit throughout the year by the way they were regrouped during the, Rondo. I think we saw some of those groups, like, the Cuatro Fantásticos, and then Campana was there with them. Then we saw all the young Argentines together, and we saw Lawson Sunderland, David Ruiz, Christoph. I think the groups were, pretty well defined. But I don't think that's completely unusual. It's I think it comes down to personality at some point. I think it comes down to personality, but yeah, you kind of want to have the group to be just together for a long time. The one thing that maybe they did trying to get them closer was the asados. I mean, we saw some of those throughout the year.
But Phil Neville was big. Phil Neville was big on like team bonding exercises, and remember that one time I think they went to Top Golf, and Blaise Matuidi had one of the most horrific golf swings you'll ever see in your life. I'm no golf expert, but it was really bad. You saw some of that. With Inter Miami now, I feel like there's a divide. There's the Cuatro Fantásticos, there's los Argentinos, and then there's like much of the rest of the team. Maybe throw Campana in there with those Argentinos, even though he's not Argentino. I think that's the makeup of the team. Now, there's in any team, there's different, what do you call them? Different cliques, right? There's different groups that hang out with themselves a little bit more, but those cliques are still a little bit tighter or more tightly bonded. Whereas here, it feels like they're not so tightly bonded. That's just a perception on the outside. You listen to Julian Gressel talk about Messi and his conversation with Messi, and he said he talked to him once about his Avenger celebrations that he did last year. So, I mean, did he talk to him last year about that? Was that this year? I mean, is that the only thing they've talked about?
No, he probably went back like, oh, you remember we were talking last year about the Avenger celebration? So have you thought that your thought process has changed? Something like that.
Some riveting conversation. There's a lot to dive into with the dynamics of this team. We will do so in more detail this offseason because I want to keep the pod going. Normally, we end up taking 2 months off and we're not around for much except for like the big news, but I'm going to do my best.
We can this year.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We can. Yeah,
I don't think there's much time.
Because of Masche, of course. Then the Club World Cup draw, the Champions Cup draw. Yeah, I just don't think, and I'm assuming, that was one question that I had this morning, but, I don't know. Oh, I went with the Leagues Cup route. Yeah, I was debating whether asking about, a little bit more in detail about preseason. When exactly were they planning to start preseason? I think Jorge Mas did mention about, and this is the reason why I moved away from the question, because he did mention that they will have another tour for preseason next year, but it's just it'll be different from what they did, the complete disaster they did last year.
This year.
This year, right? Yes, this year, early this year. So, but it's I'm assuming it's going to be a quick turnaround. I don't see them starting preseason, in late January. I'm assuming they'll do that in mid-January at least. Obviously, that the draw, the Conca Champions draw will be very telling, because that will set the tone as to where, when, and where they're going to play the first official match next year.
Where? Which tournament?
Conca Champions.
Hmm.
They're gonna play early, so that's. I mean, we know MLS is not going to start, until later on in the late, maybe late February, early March, something like that.
Late February.
Yeah, so I don't think their first match will be an MLS match. Official, I mean.
Jay Vasquez says, ownership talks about finding and buying the finest and best thoroughbreds for the races and show up with a mule. I agree with that, man.
Mascherano has some work to do when he comes here, because people are not excited. Just not excited. If there's something that the team can pick up from the announcement, is that, fine, you're making the decision that Messi wants, but the response from everybody, it's not very positive.
Right. The initial...
He's not selling any tickets right now.
Right. The initial reaction has not been a positive, not a net positive from the outside. So we'll see. We'll have plenty to talk about once it's officially announced. The timeline on that is unclear. I would say probably, not inside information, but I would say probably after Thanksgiving. So maybe in a couple weeks or so. But as soon as we get information, we'll share it on our social media channels. And of course, we'll have a Miami Total Football Radio show to talk about it all. Jose, we've gone very, very long. Last thing I want to say is, it's been interesting covering Tata Martino and this team over the last year and a half. Yes, Messi arrived. Yes, that is obviously going to boost the team. But Tata Martino also did help take this thing forward one more step. Maybe not as many steps forward as he would have liked, as Inter Miami would have liked, but they definitely took steps in the right direction. I thought he was un caballero, a complete gentleman in the way he handled himself, a true professional. And I think you got a sense of that if you've seen the press conference from earlier today. It is on Miami Total Football's YouTube page.
Yeah.
I didn't get a question in today, but everyone that did, or almost everyone that did, had very kind words for him and thankful words for him, yourself included. And I think that shows not that we were, Tata's defenders, but that there was a good working relationship and that
Right.
he treated the media well. He didn't make the media, like some coaches do, as an opposition, right? Even when he was faced with tough questions, uncomfortable questions, preguntas incómodas, he still handled it like a pro. He still responded in a professional manner. He maybe it's just due to his experience, but he handled the media well. And I think, at least from my standpoint, I appreciated it. I think most of the media appreciated that part of the head coaching role. We'll probably miss going forward. Javier Mascherano, younger, newer, or closer to having been a player. So maybe we'll see some more Phil Neville-like rants and outbursts, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Next year is going to be very, very interesting. So just wanted to say that. Best wishes to him, and hopefully everything is okay with his family. We joked, but if things, if reasons are that he's leaving to go back home for family reasons, best wishes to him. And we'll see if we see him back in MLS, or if he goes to Newell's Old Boys, or what happens to him in his career going forward.
No, I think not only from the media standpoint, but from the team's short history, I think is by far from the coaching staff, as that we have seen. I think he left a lot for this team. He talked about this a little bit, and maybe that's where he gets some sort of comfort from not winning championships. How the way he changed the team, competed, in the perception, as a team that, at least in MLS, people had about Inter Miami. So I think he did that, and yeah, I would add to what you said about relationship with the media. How much I particularly learned from him. Because it's the way he sees the game and the way he approaches not necessarily tough questions, but sometimes, I don't know if this is the right word, but dumb questions.
I don't know about dumb questions, Jose. Come on, man. I would say there are questions that are asked, especially at practice, which you guys don't necessarily get to hear. But there are questions that are asked at practice that are fuera de foco, like out of realm with the team,
Right.
like in the standing of the team. Like you don't get questions about Balón de Oro or this or that. Like,
I would go worse than
the state of Argentina's first division, this team, this hiring, this person retiring. And he gets questions like that have nothing to do with Inter Miami. And he handles them with aplomb. He handles them, he gives you the response, he gives you a response. Usually. Sometimes he's like, I don't have much to say about that. But he never talked down to media. He never acted like he was smarter than, even though he is, right? Clearly, I'm not going to sit here and say Tata Martino doesn't know more than you and I put together about football. I would never say that. But he just, the way he carried himself, was top notch. Again, maybe it comes from experience. Maybe it comes from having coached in all different parts of the world and pressure-packed situations. But yeah, he carried himself very, very, very well.
I would say
not always the case.
I would finish with this. I would say MLS is not a better league right now than what it was, a few hours ago when Tata was still a head coach for this league. I think he was good for the team, good for the league, which, I still believe the league needs to, get a step or two or three or four or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 higher when it comes to head coaches. And Tata was very, very high up there. When it comes to coaches in this league. So, we'll see what Mascherano can do. But I doubt that he's going to get to Tata's level anytime soon.
Carla says, I will always remember Tata's answer to your question about wearing the penny and that he was a bit gordito for it to fit. Funny enough. That's a good way to end this. I will end it. I'm going to extend this with one more question. Your favorite Tata Martino moment. It could be in a game from his coaching. It could be behind the scenes. It could be a response to a question. It could be anything at all. So there you go. Think about it. I got to think about it too. That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I haven't thought about it. I don't know. I just like everything about, the interaction we have with him,
He talked football too. He talked a lot of football.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He would go into it with you.
Yeah, I kind of like the Kabbalah that he had with Michelle, our colleague from the Miami Herald. She needed to have the first question. I kind of like that. I thought that was nice, and I can't remember any moment in particular. But I do appreciate. I think there was a moment as well we had on Zoom a few weeks ago where, like again, Michelle was not there, and so she usually gets the first question. So I got the first question. He was a little bit surprised that I got the first question.
Michel.
Yeah. So I mean, that's I think if maybe if we look back, maybe we should have thought about this. If we look back, I'm gonna ask Andrea because she'll probably remember something else, and then we'll share it in the next pod. But yeah, it was. I really enjoyed it. Covering that was, as of right now, in terms of coaches, I think I wouldn't put him up the top because I would still have Alessandro Nesto at the top. But right after, not because of I believe Tata is probably the best coach I've ever covered, but Nesta was just different relationships, so many other things, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
My favorite Tata moment. It's gotta be.
I'm sure I'll ask Andrea in the next pod. I'm gonna bring 3 or more moments that she remembers that I don't.
It'll be old news by then, Jose. It'll be old news. I'm trying to think. I think it's got to be a reaction to a goal. I'm trying to think. It's something. It's like a fuzzy memory, but I remember there being a really comical reaction or a nice reaction to one of the goals. I can't remember.
No, but I thought you meant like with us.
Anything. It could be any. No, it doesn't have to be with us. It could be anything. It could be anything.
I think there was one in particular in the New York City game, late in the season, where I think his son actually gets a red card. Like he turns his back to the to the referee. He was so upset that day. He was so pissed, with the referee.
Princess Shorty says, I love the Tata sideline drama, throwing his hands in the air. Catra Loco says, it sounded like Michelle was going to cry when she was saying bye to him today. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I know I asked you the question and you're kind of stumped. I am stumped too. It's not because there's a lack of them. It's just a matter of finding the top-notch one.
Right.
The penny thing about being poquito muy gordito, that's up there. That might be it, actually.
Yeah, that's
me.
a good one.
That might be it. That might be it. It was humorous. It was like personable.
Yeah.
That could be it. That could be it.
Yeah, there's some very good moments. Very good moments.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll leave it there. We've gone on for a very long time, but there's a lot to talk about with regards to the current state of Inter Miami and the future. We'll be back. Again, we're not taking the two-month break. I don't know if we'll be back next week because of Thanksgiving, unless the announcement is officially made. But if we're not back next week, we'll be back in 2 weeks. No ifs, ands, or buts. So for Jose Armando, I am Franco Panizo. You guys, thank you for tuning in, for listening, for commenting, for watching. This has been Miami Total Football. I couldn't do it, man. What's going on with me today? Radio. I'm going to do it. Radio. There we go. Got it. I got to switch transition from English to Spanish. My tongue. We'll be back very, very soon. If we don't come back before Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving for those that celebrate. And we will talk to you guys very, very soon.